Hey there, it's Carly. I've been hosting the Expat Focus podcast for 8 years now, and I want to keep on making it interesting and relevant for you. So let me know what you'd like to hear on the show by emailing contact@expatfocus.com. And if you do love what you hear, I would love it if you left a review on Apple Podcasts or however you like to listen. We know Denmark regularly tops the list of countries that are the happiest in the world, but how patient are the Danes when it comes to language learners? And why are you more likely to pick up Danish faster if you happen to speak German? Sigga Hansen joins me to answer these questions and more. She's a Danish language teacher and the founder of Lingua Danica. Sigga, you're at the helm of one of the largest online communities for Danish language learners. Can you tell me what motivated you to start teaching Danish and make it your career?
Yes, well, it was actually quite a coincidence that I ended up in teaching Danish. I studied French and Spanish at the university, and then I was offered a Danish teaching job, and I needed a job for just a year, and I said, okay, why not? And then I ended up totally loving it. I just loved meeting all these wonderful people from so many cultures and countries and so many different backgrounds, and just be able to help make a difference for them in Denmark. I have also lived abroad myself. I have lived in France after high school when I was very young, and I have lived also in Istanbul in Turkey. So I know from both places what it feels like to struggle speaking the language, understanding what's going on around you, to participate actively in the language, in the local language. So so helping people get a smoother transition into Denmark and the Danish society is what I really love doing in my work.
I find it really interesting that you studied these other foreign languages and then ended up teaching your native language. And having lived abroad yourself, what sort of qualities or considerations do you think that brought to the way you approach teaching Danish?
Yeah, well, I think that I can really put myself into the shoes of my students. And through years and years of teaching now, I also have a good understanding of like the struggles they have when it comes to learning Danish, the pitfalls and the challenge areas. So yeah, I think I have a good feeling of what I need to pay attention to when I am teaching a certain something like specific grammar topic or vocabulary or whatever it is.
And who are your typical students? Who's choosing to learn Danish and why are they learning Danish?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different types of students, but if I were just to pick one type, it would be someone who moved to Denmark for work, someone who got offered a job, and now they need to learn Danish. Yeah, it could also be like someone who met someone from Denmark, someone who moved to the country for love. Yeah, so I think those are the two most typical types of students of mine.
I know Denmark is up there with countries like Sweden and the Netherlands as one of those countries with a really high proficiency of English. Does that pose a challenge for people when they choose to move to Denmark and then try to learn Danish when all around them people are really good at English that could be their mother tongue too?
Yeah, yes. Well, I think initially when people arrive, I think they find it really nice that they're able to communicate straight away in English. But yeah, especially in Copenhagen, I think the Copenhageners are notorious for switching to English immediately. But if you leave the big cities, if you go to smaller towns where people, what do you say, don't have as much interaction with foreigners, with internationals as Copenhageners do, then I think it will be a lot easier to stick to Danish and to actually get to practice.
Now, I was doing my research on the Danish language and I read that it's kind of a sister language to Swedish and Norwegian, if I'm remembering correctly. So, do certain nationalities have an upper hand when it comes to learning Danish? Are Swedes and Norwegian people going to pick it up faster than Australians, French, Italians?
Yeah, yes, for sure. I mean, Danish and the other Scandinavian languages, Swedish and Norwegian, as you mentioned, are very similar. However, that can also pose, what do you say, that could also be tricky because then people, I mean, if we talk about speaking Danish, because it's easy to speak maybe part Danish, part Swedish, or part Norwegian because the languages are
Kind of
so
mix it
similar.
up,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then it can be hard to like know, okay, which language am I speaking now? So I actually realized that the ones who learn the language like best and fastest would be the Germans. Yeah,
Really?
that's interesting
Well,
because
so it is a Germanic
it
language, so
is
there are similarities,
exactly
right?
exactly there are similarities, but the languages are not that similar. So I think that's the trick here. So that's what I have seen. Like I've seen some Germans learn the language quite fast and very well as well.
Speaking of learning the language quite fast and very well, the most famous reference for me, especially being Australian, is Princess, now Queen Mary of Denmark.
Hmm.
I recall living back in Australia and watching news reports about how she just smashed it with her Danish and she became really fluent really quickly. And I can imagine at the palace she's having, private lessons with the very best tutors to get her to that point. What do you think of Queen Mary's Danish?
I think it's brilliant. She speaks really really good Danish, and yeah, she you can hear she has a very vast vocabulary, and her pronunciation is also very good. You can hear her accent, but yeah, she speaks very well.
I really love those social media videos where language teachers are watching a high profile person speak in their language and kind of critiquing how they go. So, are there any high profile celebrities, public figures, other than Queen Mary, of course, that are known to be Danish speakers? And what do you think?
She is actually the first one that comes to mind.
Definitely,
Yeah,
right?
she is the first one. There's another person also in the royal family, now deceased Prince Henrik, the husband of our former Queen Margrethe
Of
II. He
course.
was French, and he was very much critiqued by the Danes for years and years. They were always talking about how bad he spoke Danish and can't he learn Danish? He's been here so many years,
Oh,
but to
goodness.
be honest, I think people were too hard on him because he actually had, I think he had a very good level of Danish. He had a French accent, but but who cares? I think people were too hard on him, to be honest. So I don't think it was fair to criticize him that much.
I noticed the singer Jessie J is dating a Danish guy, so I keep stalking her socials, wondering when she's going to start busting out a bit of Danish or spending more time there.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
And are the Danes pretty forgiving? I know in France sometimes it can be quite intimidating speaking to French people because you do feel a little bit judged if you're misgendering, the table or things like that. Um, How accepting are Danes generally to people giving their language a go?
Unfortunately, not accepting enough. Um, yeah, so I think Danish pronunciation, I would say that's the hardest part of the language. Um, I think that can really be a challenge, and many Danes, if they don't understand it, they're like, "Oh, what? I don't understand." I have heard internationals in Denmark like talking about this "what" from Danes when they just don't get it. But it's also very important when you speak the language to what do you say to speak with the correct rhythm, with the correct put the stresses in the right places and those things. Because if you don't do that, it can be hard to understand. So yeah, it's just tricky. So it is hard, and I wish people were more patient with people learning Danish, because the only way to learn the language is to speak the language, and there is no way around that tricky, difficult, frustrating period when you don't speak it fluently. But yeah, that's the only way forward. So yeah, I wish people were more patient with people
Danish
learning the language.
speakers.
Yeah.
I always think it's incredibly impressive anyone that embarks on learning another language in life. So I think just giving it a go is such a commendable thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also people who criticize a lot, they haven't experienced it themselves. So it's very easy to criticize someone who doesn't speak your language that you speak really well, and not consider how hard it actually is.
Sigga, what's the most enjoyable part for you about teaching Danish?
It is, like I mentioned before, to meet so many wonderful people from all over the world, from so many different backgrounds. And yeah, it's like what do you say, having the world brought to you, just from your own country. I think that's fantastic.
And what's your best language hack? I mean, everyone wants to be able to just put a chip in their brain and learn a language that way, right? Without really trying. I know there are methods like, revising flashcards, listening to podcasts. Obviously, you need to be out there speaking it. But if you found one particular method for Danish kind of, is optimal for your students?
Well, of course, I'm a bit biased, but I would say to, at least if you're a beginner, I would recommend that you actually get help learning the language. You join a course, or maybe you study on your own.
Do you mean going further than just downloading an app?
Yes, yes, because what do you say? Making that foundation, like understanding the basics of the language, understanding like how do I form the verbs, what about the nouns, like singular, plural, all these things. It's very important. I have met people who just, I don't know, got a Danish partner, and they just learned it by listening, and yeah, so over the years they started speaking. But
So maybe that's key.
yeah.
Get on the dating apps and find a Danish
Yeah,
partner.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, you learn a lot. But I have also met people who were frustrated, who always felt insecure because they never, what do you say, learn the language. Of course, you learn it, but they were always insecure about how to express themselves, if what they said was grammatically correct, and those things. So I think it's a good thing to at least start out by following some kind of system helping beginners.
We spoke earlier about how Danish society has a lot of English. I've spoken to other guests on this podcast in the past about life in Denmark and how it's possible to work in English-speaking jobs and live your life in English. But what do you think? I suppose. learning Danish and speaking Danish really unlocks about living in Denmark that you possibly don't get in the English version of Denmark.
Yeah, well, I mean, to get under the skin of the culture, I think it's important to at least know a little bit of the local language. You don't need to be totally fluent, but at least know some basics, and I think also as a way to show your investment to the locals. And then, yeah, there is at a workplace where the official language is English, for example. If there are Danes, they will be speaking Danish together in more casual situations. So, and then if you don't know the language, you are going to miss out on those small situations where people basically connect and bond over small talk, like, "Wow, what are your weekend plans?" or "Listen to what I did this weekend," or I don't know, "Oh, are you moving? Good luck," and all these small things that that makes us bond with each other and create connections. And yeah, so this is what you will miss out on if you don't speak Danish at all.
Yeah, definitely. I've really felt that living in France, and it's been a huge motivator for me to get better at French is just, going to the pub, to the bar with a bunch of teammates after a sports training and not being able to join in the banter and things like that. You're like, okay, I need to get this language thing organized.
Mhm, yes.
Do you encourage your students to measure their progress in any certain way? Like, I know a big milestone for me was when I was able to go into the post office here in France in my first year or so here and successfully get a parcel mailed because the first couple of times I tried, it was a complete failure and I just burst into
Oh
tears.
no. Yeah, well, what I encourage my students to do is to be really clear on their why. Like, why are they learning Danish? What is their motivation? Is it, I don't know, to speak with their colleagues at work? Is it to speak with their kids' teachers? Is it to feel more integrated? Whatever it is. Or is it to be able to understand movies with actor Mads Mikkelsen in his own language? Whatever it is, it's important to be clear on that. It's going to help you stay on track, even on days when you feel less motivated, or if you feel like quitting. That can really help you, and also to
Remember your why. Yeah.
exactly, and also to celebrate when you reach that point. So to give yourself credit for all the hard work you've done.
Sigga, if listeners are interested in diving into learning Danish with yourself, where can they find you?
I would suggest finding me on Instagram. You can find me with the handle at Lingua Danica. That's the name of my company. But I'm also on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube with the same handle. But yeah, I would say Instagram is my main channel.
Fabulous. Well, Sigga, thank you so much for coming on the Expat Focus podcast to discuss learning
Thanks
Danish.
for having me. It was a pleasure.
That's it for today. For more content on Denmark, simply roll back through our podcast archives. You'll find my chat with Kate Dahl, who's a career consultant, on how to find a job in the country. And I speak with Melanie Haynes on how the Danish healthcare system works. She also gives an insight into her life as a Brit in Copenhagen. Sign up to our monthly newsletter to never miss an update. That's expatfocus.com/newsletter, and I'll catch you next time.